Hello and welcome to Branding for Success, where we discuss all things brand strategy, marketing, and design. I'm Rick Callahan, the founder and CEO of Creative.
And I'm Julia LaCursi, the brand strategist at Creative. Whether you're well-versed in branding or just getting started, we've got the roadmap for your brand success.
Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about
Brand storytelling.
Brand storytelling. All right, I'll bite.
What does that mean?
What is it?
So brand storytelling is definitely a very, I would say, underrated and also misinterpreted element of branding. We definitely find our clients are very unsure what brand storytelling actually means. So to give a very simple definition, it's essentially about creating a narrative based on your brand's core values, your brand's purpose, that can really bring your brand to life. And so the whole goal in the end is to resonate with your target audience.
So I'm a potential client, or I'm a client, theoretically, hypothetically. Is that like the story of how I got started in business?
No, so I would say that is probably the biggest misconception. A lot of the times people think brand storytelling is your brand's story. So like maybe your origin story, how your brand came to be, what your founding story is. But really it's about your audience's story and bringing your brand, integrating your brand into their journey. What are their behaviors? What are their interests? And how does your brand then come into the mix with that?
So why is it important to talk about their story instead of my story as the theoretical owner?
Because your brand is for your audience, not for you.
But I want it to be for me, right? But that is what we run into, is that a lot of times people will think their origin story is their brand story, right? They think it's, people care that, you know, they got a degree in whatever and started a business and at the end, right? It's not very motivating or inspiring outside of that person achieving something, right? So it's more about what value does it bring to someone, and the way you articulate that value is going to be through that narrative that Julie is talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you know, obviously one misconception that we just noted, the origin story being confused with storytelling. What are some other common mistakes we've typically run into with clients? I know I can think of a few, but what do you think are some of the common misperceptions, common mistakes when it comes to storytelling?
I think a mistake that is pretty consistent, you know, something we'll advise clients to work around or not do, is to not really avoid their clientele and customers, and to actually get the testimonials, get the feedback, turn that into your narrative for the brand. It's not about really how upper management feels about anything. Top down isn't really going to inspire anyone all the way through unless it's authentically connecting to those that you serve, right? So it has to be from the bottom up and then top down. So really, you know, who are you engaging and what value you're providing from the eyes of those you're serving, not yourself.
Absolutely. So would you say it's enough to just have, you know, a page on your website
that's
titled testimonials?
already no. Just a testimonial page that says
I feel like we
testimonials.
see that a lot.
Yeah, we do have a lot of folks that we've worked on websites in particular for content strategy. We're trying to figure out, okay, where do we put these testimonials? Just to kind of really engage people throughout your site. Don't put it on one page that says testimonials or whatever, or what our clients are saying. Like that's okay, but you need those narratives throughout everything. So from the videos that are on your homepage, if they're there, to the call out actions, to the are you ready to sign up now, all of it should resonate with the storytelling, the narrative of what the end user should expect from your brand.
Some common examples just that, you know, everybody typically knows of just, you know, popular brands. One I always think of as Patagonia. Mm-hmm. So Patagonia, you know, if you're familiar, they are a clothing brand, but they're a lot more than that, and they stand to be a lot more than that. So, you know, if you know anything about Patagonia, immediately what you think of is sustainability, high quality products that last the test of time. That's exactly, you know, the founding beliefs they were, you know, built on and you know, has stayed true today.
The way they articulate that through their marketing and their brand positioning is by putting up signs. I don't remember the verbatim wording, but it was something along the lines of, we don't want you to buy more.
Yeah, don't buy this jacket. I think that was like a big Black Friday campaign back,
so
you know, a few years ago.
Buy one, keep it forever,
Yeah.
you know, show us your, you know, thing that's 30 years old and put it on social. Like it's engaging that narrative that their stuff is quality, it lasts forever.
Yeah.
And they're letting their customers show that, but they're also encouraging people to show it.
Yeah.
right? So they know their brand story and they're putting it out there in a way that is not about themselves, but rather the value as perceived by those they're selling to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I forget when the campaign actually was, and I think it's still ongoing. They continue to do this, but one thing that they do very effectively is just get their customer stories. So exactly going back to your point about, getting that feedback, hearing, those reviews and, what the customers are actually saying and building your brand from that, because that's really what holds meaning. And so Patagonia is a great example of that, because they actually get those customer stories and of, a guy who bought this jacket 20 years ago and has worn it on this hiking trip and this trip, and they really get those real actual living stories, and have that all throughout their content marketing to really reinforce this idea.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more than just saying
Quality product.
yeah, exactly, our jackets are really high quality.
Yeah.
You're literally proving it through an actual human connection, and I think that's really
So the
important thing to note.
storytelling when it comes to branding is more about the human connection
Absolutely,
than
yeah.
it is features.
Yeah, and then so going back to some of those common mistakes we often see, a really, really simple one is photos and videos, of the work that you do or of the people that you serve.
Not showing
it
the
is.
real story, not showing anything actually.
Yeah.
Maybe using stock imagery, that means nothing.
Exactly, yeah. I think photos and videos, it sounds so simple, and I think even in today's world it probably seems just so intuitive, but it really is a very common mistake that people overlook, is not integrating those photos, not placing enough value on that. We have so many clients that just don't take the time to take a photo at an event, or take a photo of whatever it is, or a video, and using that throughout their content marketing across all brand touch points to really be reinforcing that story and making that connection consistently, I think is really important.
Yeah, quick anecdote. One of the clients we went to a year or two ago at this point, I'm not gonna say any names, but they were in the manufacturing space. And when we walked through their offices, they had a lot of trophies, like local town, sports trophies for local teams that they sponsored. And they've been doing this for like decades or whatever. And none of this is a part of their identity of who they are outside of that office space. Right? Everything about who they are in the real world is not being reflected, or was not being reflected, I should say, in the digital world, in the advertising, in the marketing. They weren't telling their brand story. They were just saying, we provide X service.
Right.
And when you do that, you're basically becoming a commodity. You're commoditizing who you are, what you offer, and you're saying, we're the same as everyone else, you might as well pick the cheapest one. But if your brand story is conveying a value at such an intrinsic, human, emotional level, and it's one that other people can resonate with, then you put that story out, you're gonna get the right type of target clients coming after you. They're coming in as opposed to you reaching out. So knowing what those things are, that is your real world reputation, how people see you, how they perceive the value of what you offer, take their narrative, make that your brand story, and put that out there, and you'll do quite well.
Absolutely, and just going off that example, because I remember exactly what you're talking about, and it's important to note that sponsoring those teams, it had nothing, like you said, it had nothing to do with their actual work, but it was a very strong reflection of who they were as an internal team, as people, and that was also, I don't know if you remember when we were developing their core values, relationships, being very community oriented, being very authentic, that was very much a part of their core internal values, that we use to kind of guide their brand strategy. And then so speaking of that authenticity that's very much imbued in those kinds of personal stories and connections, like that example we just gave, I think another thing to note is that authenticity is at the center of everything when it comes to marketing these days. So do you want to talk a little bit about why brand storytelling is really important, especially today and in today's market?
So we are more connected than we've ever been, as a species, the human population. And we used to delineate generations of target audiences. Like we would just say, oh, we're looking at the baby boomer generation from this age, this income level in this area. That was all you needed to know to advertise to the right people and say we provide services. But we are so interconnected with the internet and all this stuff now that people's bullshit meters are so finely tuned. They're so used to being barraged with so much stuff that they're just not dealing with any of it. So the second it feels like sales, The second it feels like manipulation, the second it feels like I'm just trying to emote something onto you so you feel a certain way, most generations, especially like I would say millennial and younger, are going to go, F that, I'm out of here, I'm done. So the best way to appeal to your target audiences really is to know what is the story that they have of your brand, those you've already served well, and put that out there. It's just like referring yourself to other people through the words of those you've already worked with. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll engage our clientele and say, why do people refer you? Is word of mouth the biggest factor of what brings in new clients and customers to you? There's your brand story. Talk about that. Why? Why are they referring?
What are they saying?
What are they saying? What do they care about? It's probably not going to be them saying quality products and services, but something very specific to how their life is changed, different, has an added value, or just more enjoyable.
And that becomes your brand messaging, your value proposition. It's right there. You don't need to make it up from scratch. It's literally right there.
Not making it up, authentic. Listening to your customers that already work with you, authentic. Putting out the real messaging of what you provide, authenticity. If you do that, you should be in a good spot to position your brand with that narrative, that story. Otherwise, if you lack on any of that authenticity or you're inconsistent with it, you change your messaging all the time, people are going to think, I can't trust this, or they're not even going to think it, they're going to feel it. They're going to know I can't trust this person, this brand, this entity, whatever it is. So authenticity all the way.
Absolutely. I think also another common just issue that people face when trying to figure out what their brand storytelling should be is balancing that authenticity with actual marketing strategy, because in the end you do want your brand to increase its awareness and hopefully drive sales or whatever it is, and that really is it right there. Like that's kind of what I always tell our clients, like you don't need to worry about putting your brand out there and selling your product or your service, whatever it is, and also maintaining authenticity, because by just being authentic you're doing just that. So you don't need to worry about that.
It's much easier to do that than you think. So walk around your workspace, wherever that is, if you're in person, and just do the experience that your customer or client would have. Like go pretend you don't know anything and look around and ask people about what they do or what are they working on. And those little nuances and intricacies of the culture, of the vibe, of why people are passionate about what they do in that organization, those little things are going to be the authentic moments that you can capture and you can put out there. So really it's literally what we're doing here. Right? We're just talking about what we know, and we're being ourselves. And this is what gets us seen for the integrity that we have, the knowledge that we know, and the services that we can do. We're not just saying, buy our branding, right? But we're talking about our subject matter here, and we're being authentic about it. So you guys can do the same thing as far as social media content or email newsletters or advertising on a billboard or whatever. Just capture those authentic moments of passion, of enthusiasm, of really caring about what you do, or those who receive your services or products or whatever, their passion about it, or how their life is enhanced, or what value they receive. Just showing those moments of joy and value is really what it's about, to be able to show that authenticity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point too of maintaining that narrative across different touch points, through email, through social, through your website. That's really what's going to kind of build your brand perception over time. So by having that narrative kind of come across and intertwine through all of your brand touch points, that'll be really important, in the long term as well. Alrighty, so do we have another real world example that we can give our listeners?
Let's talk about a narrative, a brand story that is less about a complete story, and it's more about putting you in the story. Right, so there's some companies that do this well. So Red Bull is one of them, right? Yeah. So if you think about Red Bull and the advertising they do, they never really just sell the benefits of the product itself, or the features, I should say. What they do is they have that obscure cartoon commercial just to get the brand in your head. Red Bull gives you wings, got it. But then outside of that, where they spend most of their advertising dollars and marketing dollars is in these engagements in the real world that are extremely active and action-oriented and like stunt double type stuff, right? So you might remember some years back they had someone jumping from like the outer stratosphere or whatever area, way high up, and they were just gliding all the way down to the ground. It was all sponsored Red Bull and stuff like that. No reason other than this is an amazing feat and it's branded by Red Bull, and look, it gives you wings. You're flying through the sky. Isn't that amazing? This guy was safe, landed good, everything was great. And they do that stuff all the time. They're constantly sponsoring these action sports things and making sure that people know that when you think sports, when you think action, when you think adventure, when you think these sort of things, you're thinking something like Red Bull.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they're really communicating that energy, that, you know, the feeling that you get when drinking a Red Bull, rather than, you know, I couldn't tell you how much caffeine is in a Red Bull. Like, they're not just like kind of listing out those different
Compare that to
features.
coffee, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever see coffee sell itself that way? Coffee's
exactly.
not exciting. It's like, you know,
It's
totally
more about
different
the
vibe.
experience,
Yeah.
or, you know. Yeah.
So that's the story that Red Bull goes with, and it works, is they're putting you as the potential customer in the story. Like, it's possible for you to feel this way. Even if you're just drinking it in the middle of the workday, you could feel like you're flying through the sky, you know? Another one would be Coca-Cola. You know, they had their campaign in the early 90s, whatever it was, late 80s, something, could be even earlier. But the experience happiness, right? They're selling happiness, joy, the coming together. They had the campaign was that them that had the names on the cans?
So it was I know that's the one I was thinking of. I think it was like Share a Coke campaign or something like that, where they put, you know, different names on the cans to really reinforce
It worked for
that
me.
idea of I know, right?
I bought some and gave some,
But to reinforce that idea of togetherness,
of sharing happiness, joy,
Exactly.
those little moments of life, and Coca-Cola's really stepped into that for the last couple of decades, and they're not stopping.
Yeah,
right?
and I think that's also, you know, that ties to the point of knowing what your messaging is and what you want, you know, people to think about when they think of your brand, and translating that messaging into a narrative. So Coke, since its beginning, had those values, had that you know, purpose, had that messaging, you know, from the start about joy, happiness, you know, sharing things together. And they just imbued that in different ways into, you know, their different narratives to communicate that idea. And that's what makes you think, oh, Coke, happiness, joy, rather than, you know, them saying that. It's more so about, you know, showing that and kind of resonating with their audience in that way, connecting those feelings to their brand, rather than, you know, simply telling you that this is what their brand is all about.
Right. So what tips can we recap for the listeners and watchers out there?
Absolutely. So I think, you know, first and foremost, and we probably have said this in our past couple episodes, and we'll say it in probably every other one from here on out, but knowing your target markets, it's always going to come back to that. You know, clearly we talked a lot about getting feedback from your consumers, your customers, whoever they are, but, you know, from the start, actually knowing who they are, so you know how to find them, how to reach them, how to resonate with them. If you understand, you know, their interests, their behaviors, their challenges, you know, then you can actually begin to shape a narrative that connects with them, and, you know.
Yeah. If you look, a lot of the most popular businesses that have come out of nowhere in the last like 15, 20 years, these are the companies that knew going into creating the business exactly what target audience they wanted and what brand story they're putting in front of them. And they needed to make sure that brand story was authentic. So, you know, it's something you can do too with any decisions about your organization, your brand, your business, whatever it is. For all the future strategy stuff, this brand story should work quite a ways out. So base your decisions on that value, that perceived value of what you're putting out there. You know, should we expand to 3 more states? I don't know. Does your brand story make sense if you do?
So I think another big tip also is, and I talked about brand messaging before, but also not letting your brand messaging get clouded by, you know, oh, I need like this really creative narrative. I think that's another issue, and we talked a lot about authenticity, clearly, and letting authenticity just kind of guide you. So going back to that, you know, having a clear and concise message, forming that brand perception from the start, and not letting, you know, this elusive idea of brand storytelling get in the way of getting that message through to your target audience.
The point of the story is to convey a particular idea, not to mention every feature, every benefit, every service, any of that. It's not about that necessarily. It's about that end result, and the impact that it would have on those you serve.
Yeah.
And so another tip, just to recap, is capturing those moments of authenticity throughout your organization, your brand, your product experience, whatever it is. So this could be the customers, consumers, whoever, utilizing your product or service, and literally just showing that the process involved in that experience. It could be them giving feedback and telling their story, or it could be just pulling pieces from each of those and then creating narrative out of that, which is what we recommend. So get that feedback, capture those videos, take those pictures, accept testimonials from people, and look at the common denominator of all of these and generate that story out of that. Not so much what your business plan is, but rather what's already working for you.
Yeah, and put it at the forefront of, you know, your brand, of your messaging. Don't hide it on a website page. Just make it, you know, consistent, all platforms, all touch points, to really, you know, reiterate that point. And eventually that's what, when people think of your brand, that's what they think of, those stories, those feelings that are evoked. And that's really the goal of brand storytelling. You want your brand people see your logo, they hear your name. What do you want them to immediately think? Those stories.
So, good recap. Before we wrap up, there is one more thing. So we have a lot of great resources on our website, outside of this podcast, of course. Julia, there's some articles that you put up there. Anything that they should be aware of related to this?
Yeah, so I actually do have an article up on the site about brand storytelling. So we'll include a link in the show notes.
Great.
So yeah, definitely check that out. Check out the other resources on our site. And yeah, hopefully, you know, you gain the insights you need to help kind of better your brand. And if you have any questions, you could also, you know, reach out to us on our website, reach out to us on social media.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Until next time.
Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a review. Also, make sure to share this with any friends and colleagues that you think might be helpful as well.
And if there are any other topics you want us to talk about or questions you have, definitely let us know by sending us a message on social media, and follow us too.
And definitely make sure you hit the website, creative.com. Tons of resources out there. Until next time, have a good one.